everyone, it's Gene Calderon here again with Gene Calderon Apologetics Ministries, and today we are going to continue in our series of teaching days, theme days, and today being Monday, we are going to explore what we like to call Messiah Monday. And on Messiah Monday, what we like to do is look at the Gospels, look at what Jesus taught and did, and try to analyze that and look at that from a first century perspective in Galilee, where Jesus did most of his ministry. And so we get a lot of insights, getting a lot more out of the Gospels than what we probably typically get from a normal Bible study, because we're just looking at a historical and cultural insight that will help in applying the spiritual applications that we want to do in order to live for Jesus. Now, one of those things that has been fascinating for me and that I really enjoy is a Jewish teaching technique known as Remez. And we explained that a little bit with the last Messiah Monday. Remez is just a way for a rabbi or a teacher at that time to have a bigger impact in a statement that he was making. This would be when a rabbi would quote just a part of the scriptures and then let their audience do the rest. They would have to be very familiar with the scripture in order to, first of all, recognize where the scripture was, and then either know the lines after it or before it or the context of the scripture, and then make the application. And so Jesus was a master at doing this. He understood it very well. And the only way it works is when we ourselves are very familiar with the text that we can do that. Kind of like for me, I can do that very easily with some of my favorite movies, maybe Star Wars or Jurassic Park or, something like that. You quote a line from it, I know exactly where you're at. I can quote the next line, or I can get a reference that you may be making because I'm so familiar with those movies. And so that's kind of an example modern day that we can do. But again, Jesus did this everywhere he went because their cultural grounding and unification was the scriptures. And so everywhere he went, whether he was preaching to the crowds or answering questions of certain individuals, he was able to give them such a deep and powerful answer by using this technique. In fact, there were times when knowing what Jesus doesn't say actually becomes more important than what he actually does say. By that I mean, when he quotes a line, he expects you to go past that line and figure out what the next verse is, or figure out what the context of that verse is. The verse itself is not the answer. It's the setting that he puts you in the context of Scripture. Let's try to see if we can do this with an example. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 18, we read a certain conversation that Peter is having with Jesus. And he says this. Peter comes up to Jesus and asks, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Or in other translations, it says 70 times 7 times. Now, what does Jesus mean when he gives that answer? Well, most of us will try to probably figure out the value of a definite number. We're trying to put this together. Okay, let's just start doing some math and wondering, does Jesus mean 77 or does he mean 70 times 7, which means 490 times? And either way, those are big numbers for me to have to forgive somebody that many times in one day. I don't know if you've ever forgiven somebody with, let's say, the lower number, 77. In how many instances have you had to forgive a single individual 77 times in one day? That's still pretty big, but is that what Jesus is meaning? Because if we do look at the math and try to figure this out any which way, I believe we're still missing the true meaning of Jesus' statement. Because the phrase 77 times or 70 times 7 times is actually found in one other place in the Bible. Do you know it? And if you don't, then we're missing it. And if Jesus really is trying to use the technique known as Remez here, we're missing it. Again, where else do we find this? And I'm kind of pausing here. I'm trying to let your brain think, where else do we find this? If you haven't figured it out, if you haven't had time to think about it, it is in the book of Genesis, chapter 4, verse 44. It's an ancient song by a person named Lamech. And he was a descendant of Cain who inherited, it seems, his father's murderous instinct. And he was trying to outdo his forefather Cain with his shocking lust for revenge. Let's read in Genesis 4:24. It says, "I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. or 70 times 7 times. In Scripture, we understand and we've probably heard that 7 is a number for completeness. And Lamech's lust for revenge went far beyond just being complete. And once we realize this, now we can start to understand maybe the contrast that Jesus is trying to make here. Jesus' followers should be as eager to forgive as Lamech was about taking vengeance. Just in the same way as Lamech was vowing punishments that far exceeded the crime, we should let our forgiveness far exceed the wrong that was done to us. That's how much Jesus is asking us to forgive. Not a particular number, but it's the passion behind being forgiving that he is asking for. In the same way that the Father has been passionate in forgiving us for the things that we have done wrong against him. And I think using that technique, Jesus is really teaching us something more than we could have ever gotten from any particular number. So I hope that helps you this week with Messiah Monday. Something to consider, something to look back and forth on. Not everybody agrees with Remez or the techniques involved or going back and forth. But again, I think this one is pretty profound when it comes to how much do I actually need to be ready to forgive someone. Again, this is Gene Calderon with Gene Calderon Apologetics Ministries. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me as a local missionary here in Northwest Indiana, serving Ratio Christi at Purdue University Northwest. That's what I am, is a missionary under that organization. And you can donate to me at the link that is going to be attached here. Looking to serve anywhere we can when it comes to students and training them to defend their faith. Or I do serve at Freedom Church in East Chicago, Indiana, and the Northwest Indiana region, speaking, events, teaching, anything like that. And if you'd like to hear more about this or would like to invite us, just reach out to us and we'd be happy to be able to serve in some way, shape, or form. So again, thanks for watching and hope to hear from you soon. God bless.